The morning sun had barely begun to break through the clouds when Maya Rodriguez's phone buzzed insistently on her nightstand. Groaning softly, she reached for it and squinted at the screen. Sophia. Maya frowned and answered immediately. Sophia, it's 5:30 in the morning. What's wrong? Her sister's voice came through weak and congested. Maya. I need the biggest favor. Maya sat up at once, concern replacing sleep. What happened? I'm sick. Really sick. I've been up all night with a fever, and I can barely stand. But I have a shift at the Ashford estate today. And if I don't show up, I could lose the account. It's my best client. Sophia broke into a cough before continuing. Please, Maya. Can you cover for me just this once? Maya pushed her hair back from her face, already feeling overwhelmed. The Ashford estate? Sophia, I don't know the first thing about housekeeping. You don't need to, Sophia assured quickly. Mr. Ashford is barely home during the day. You just have to handle basic cleaning and maybe keep an eye on his son for a few hours if needed. His name's Oliver. He's 5, sweet but very shy. Maya hesitated. She had planned to spend the day working on her master's thesis in early childhood education. But Sophia sounded exhausted, desperate even. And after everything they had survived together, Maya couldn't say no. 3 years earlier, they had lost both parents in a car accident. Since then, it had only been the two of them. Sophia had worked extra shifts to help Maya stay in school, loaned her money when things got tight, and never once complained. Now she needed help. Maya sighed softly. Okay. Text me the address and everything I need to know. Sophia let out a relieved laugh that quickly dissolved into another cough. Thank you. Seriously, you're saving my life. You owe me more than forever for this. Maya teased gently. At least 2 forevers. Sophia laughed weakly. Deal. 2 hours later, Maya pulled into a driveway so grand it made her grip the steering wheel tighter. The Ashford estate wasn't just a house. It was a mansion straight out of a magazine, sprawling gardens, a marble fountain in the circular driveway, and towering windows reflecting the gray morning sky. This is where Sophia works, Maya muttered. Suddenly, her jeans and light blue shirt felt painfully ordinary. Taking a steadying breath, she walked to the front door and rang the bell. A moment later, the door opened. The man standing there looked like he belonged on the cover of a business magazine. Tall, sharply dressed in a navy suit, with dark hair and tired eyes that hinted at too many sleepless nights. You must be Sophia's replacement, he said politely. I'm Alexander Ashford. Maya Rodriguez, she replied, offering her hand. Sophia's my sister. She's really sorry she couldn't make it today. No apology necessary, Alexander said, checking his watch briefly. These things happen. His tone was calm but distant, like someone permanently trapped in work mode. I'm already late for a meeting, he continued. My son is in the living room. He's had breakfast, but he'll need lunch around noon. There's food in the refrigerator, and Sophia left notes for you in the kitchen. Maya nodded, then paused. Your son. For the first time, something shifted in Alexander's expression. A flicker of sadness crossed his face. Oliver is 5. His mother passed away 2 years ago. His voice lowered slightly. Since then, he doesn't talk much anymore. Maya's chest tightened. He's been through a lot, Alexander added quietly. So don't take it personally if he doesn't respond to you. Before she could reply, he was already heading toward the driveway. I'll be back around 6, he said. My number's on the counter if there's an emergency. And then he was gone, leaving Maya alone inside the enormous house with a child she'd never met. She found Oliver exactly where Alexander said he would be. The little boy sat cross-legged on the floor of a massive living room that had been partially transformed into a play area. Colorful blocks surrounded him, and beside him rested a worn gray stuffed elephant with one slightly crooked ear. Oliver looked up briefly when Maya entered. He had his father's dark hair and the same guarded eyes. Hi, Oliver, Maya said softly, kneeling a few feet away. I'm Maya. I'm going to be here with you today while your dad's at work. Oliver stared at her for a second before returning to his blocks without saying a word. Maya didn't push. Her studies had taught her that grief looked different in every child. Silence was often protection. That's a pretty impressive tower, she said casually. Using the green blocks on the bottom is smart. Makes it stronger. No answer. But his hands paused for half a second. He was listening. I'm going to clean for a bit, Maya continued. But if you need me, I'll be nearby. Is it okay if I play some music? Oliver glanced up and gave the smallest nod. Maya smiled. Good choice. She spent the next few hours cleaning while quietly checking on him every so often. Oliver moved from blocks to puzzles, then from puzzles to coloring books, always keeping the elephant close beside him. He never spoke, but every time Maya entered the room, his eyes lifted toward her for a moment, as if reassuring himself she was still there. Around noon, Maya started preparing lunch. Sophia's notes mentioned that Oliver likes simple meals, so Maya made sandwiches, sliced fruit, and cheese. On impulse, she cut the sandwiches into fun shapes and arranged the fruit into a smiley face. When she carried the plate into the living room, Oliver looked up immediately. I made lunch, Maya said. Would you rather eat at the table or here? Oliver studied the plate carefully. Then he pointed toward the coffee table. Here it is, Maya said with a smile. She sat nearby while he ate quietly. Halfway through the meal, Oliver picked up his elephant and pretended to feed it a strawberry. Maya pretended not to notice at first. Then she asked gently, Does your elephant have a name? Oliver froze. For a long moment the room stayed silent. Then, so softly she almost missed it, he whispered, Humphrey. Maya's heart nearly stopped, but she kept her expression calm. Humphrey is a wonderful name, she said softly. He looks like a very loyal friend. Oliver nodded once and continued eating. After lunch, Maya finished the last of the cleaning. But instead of leaving Oliver alone, she wandered toward the bookshelf lining one wall. Would you like me to read a story? She asked. I do very dramatic voices. Oliver looked at her for a long moment. Then he stood, walked to the shelf, picked out a book about an elephant, and placed it carefully in her hands. Maya sat on the floor. To her surprise, Oliver sat beside her close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. As she read, she exaggerated every character voice, especially the elephant's. By the second page, Oliver's lips twitched. By the fourth page, he was smiling. A real smile. The sight hit Maya harder than she expected. They read 3 more books. By the last one, Oliver was leaning lightly against her shoulder, Humphrey resting in his lap. When she finished reading, Oliver looked up at her. Again, he said quietly. Maya blinked, then smiled. Again it is. They were halfway through the story when Maya heard movement near the doorway. She looked up. Alexander Ashford stood frozen in the entrance, his briefcase hanging loosely from one hand. His eyes were fixed on Oliver, on his smiling, talking son. Mr. Ashford, Maya said softly. I didn't hear you come in. Alexander barely seemed to hear her. He's talking to you, he whispered. His voice cracked on the last word. Oliver looked toward his father. Daddy, he said shyly. Maya does funny voices. Alexander's expression broke completely. He crossed the room slowly, as though afraid the moment might disappear if he moved too fast. Buddy. Oliver stood and walked into his father's arms. She made my lunch smile too, he added seriously. Alexander closed his eyes tightly as he hugged him. When he looked back at Maya, tears shone openly in his eyes. Thank you, he mouthed silently. Maya suddenly felt like she was intruding on something sacred. She quietly began gathering her things. Please don't go yet, Alexander said quickly. Oliver tugged on Maya's hand. Come see my trains. Maya glanced at Alexander, who gave her a small nod. Upstairs, Oliver proudly showed her an elaborate train set spread across a large table. His room was beautiful but strangely untouched, more like a designer showroom than a little boy's bedroom. But the train corner was different. That part looked loved. Oliver carefully explained which train was his favorite and where each track led. Maya listened attentively, asking questions and letting him lead the conversation. When they returned downstairs, Alexander had changed into jeans and a white shirt. Without the suit, he looked younger, less intimidating. Maya, he said quietly, could we talk for a minute? Oliver settled on the floor with his toys while Maya followed Alexander into the kitchen. For a moment, he simply looked at her. I don't know what happened today, he admitted. But my son hasn't spoken like that to anyone in over a year. Maya shifted awkwardly. I didn't do anything special. Yes, you did. His voice was firm. His therapist has been trying for months to get him to open up. Sophia is wonderful, but Oliver never connected with her this way. Alexander exhaled slowly. I heard him laugh today. The emotion in his voice made Maya's chest ache. I just gave him space, she said softly. Kids usually respond better when they don't feel pressured. Alexander studied her carefully. What exactly do you do? I'm finishing my master's degree in early childhood education, Maya explained. I want to work with children dealing with trauma and grief. Alexander stared at her in disbelief. You're studying exactly what my son needs. Maya shook her head gently. Every child is different. What worked today might not work tomorrow. Maybe, Alexander admitted, but today mattered. He hesitated before speaking again. I know this may sound strange since we just met, but would you consider coming back? Maya blinked. As what? Not as a cleaner, Alexander said immediately. I can hire someone else for that. I mean for Oliver. Spend time with him. Help him. Maya looked uncertain. Alexander, I still have school and my thesis, and I'm not a licensed therapist. I know, he said quickly, and I'm not asking you to replace one, but my son needs someone who makes him feel safe again. His voice lowered. Someone who can make his lunch smile. Maya looked toward the living room where Oliver sat quietly playing. This wasn't part of her plan, but something deep inside her already knew she wouldn't be able to walk away. Let me talk to Sophia, she said finally, and think about it. Alexander nodded. Of course. He handed her payment for the day, far more than Sophia usually earned. Mr. Ash. Alexander, he corrected gently. Maya looked down at the money. This is too much. No, Alexander said quietly. It isn't enough. As Maya prepared to leave, Oliver hurried toward her, clutching Humphrey tightly. Will you come back? He asked. The hope in his voice melted something inside her. Maya knelt to his eye level. Would you like me to? Oliver nodded immediately. Then yes, she said softly. I'll come back. Without warning, Oliver wrapped his small arms around her. Alexander looked stunned. Later, he would tell Maya that Oliver hadn't hugged anyone besides him since his mother died. That night, Maya told Sophia everything. Her sister sounded thrilled. Maya, this is exactly what you've been studying for, Sophia said. Maybe this opportunity found you for a reason. Over the following weeks, Maya became a regular part of the Ashford household. Alexander hired another cleaner, allowing Maya to focus entirely on Oliver. Slowly, patiently, she helped him reconnect with the world. Through art, games, music, storytelling, and simple everyday moments, Oliver began emerging from the silence grief had trapped him inside. He started speaking more. First to Maya, then to Alexander, eventually to teachers and other children. The nightmares became less frequent. The laughter became more common. And little by little, the Ashford house stopped feeling cold. Alexander noticed every change. He started coming home earlier from work. He joined story time, learned the songs Maya taught Oliver, sat on the floor during train games. For the first time in years, he felt present again. And Maya noticed him too. Not the wealthy CEO everyone else saw, but the exhausted father underneath. A man carrying grief so heavily that he had forgotten how to live beyond it. The more time they spent together, the harder it became to ignore what was growing between them. 3 months after Maya first walked through the Ashford estate doors, Alexander asked her to stay for dinner. Oliver had already gone to bed, and the house was unusually quiet. They sat in the living room with glasses of wine between them. Alexander looked nervous. Maya, he began quietly, I need to tell you something. Her heartbeat quickened. I'm falling in love with you. The honesty in his voice stole her breath. I didn't plan for it, he admitted. You came here to help my son. But somewhere along the way, you helped me too. He looked down briefly before meeting her eyes again. You brought life back into this house. You reminded me that joy still exists after loss. And every day I watch you with Oliver, I realize how deeply you've become part of our lives. Maya's eyes filled with tears. I know this situation is complicated. Alexander continued softly. You work for me, and I never want you to feel pressured. If you don't feel the same way, nothing has to change. Oliver needs you regardless. Maya shook her head almost immediately. I love you too. The words came out barely above a whisper. I tried not to, she admitted with a watery laugh. I kept telling myself it was unprofessional, that I was here for Oliver. But somewhere along the way, this stopped feeling like work. Alexander crossed the room and gently pulled her into his arms. You already feel like family, he whispered against her hair. They took things slowly after that, careful to make sure Oliver felt secure with the changes. But children often understood emotions faster than adults. One afternoon, Oliver looked up from his coloring book and asked Maya very seriously, Are you going to be my new mommy? Maya and Alexander exchanged startled glances. Maya crouched beside him carefully. Would that make you happy? Oliver thought about it. My first mommy is in heaven, he said softly. Daddy says she still watches over me. Maya nodded gently. But I think she'd want someone here too, Oliver continued. Someone who reads stories and makes lunch smile. Alexander turned away quickly, overcome with emotion. Maya hugged Oliver tightly. If you want me to, she whispered. I would be honored. Oliver smiled. Okay. 8 months later, they were married in a small ceremony in the garden. Oliver proudly carried the rings with Humphrey tucked beneath one arm. Sophia served as Maya's maid of honor and repeatedly claimed her terrible flu had been the best illness in history. During his vows, Alexander looked at Maya with tears in his eyes. You came into our lives for one day, he said. You were supposed to cover a shift and leave. Instead, you stayed and gave my son his voice back. You gave both of us a reason to live fully again. Maya smiled through tears as she answered. I thought I was helping a family in need, she said softly. I didn't realize I was finding my own. Then Oliver insisted on sharing his own vows. Maya, he announced proudly, I promise to always let you do the funny voices, and I promise to eat vegetables most of the time. Everyone laughed through their tears. Years later, people would still ask Maya and Alexander how they met. Maya would smile and say, I covered my sister's cleaning shift for one day. I was supposed to clean a house. Instead, I found a little boy who needed someone to sit on the floor and read stories with him. And Alexander would always add, she walked into our lives by accident and became the best part of them. Oliver eventually grew up to become a child psychologist, inspired by the woman who helped him find his voice again. Whenever someone asked him what made Maya so special, he always gave the same answer. She made my lunch smile. And somehow that explained everything. Because sometimes life changes through grand moments. And sometimes it changes because one person chooses to sit quietly beside a hurting child and stay long enough for them to smile again.